think there must be something wrong with me. Christmas is coming, but I'm not happy. I don't feel the way I'm supposed to feel. Maybe that's because I haven't yet listened to Charlie Brown Christmas. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of how this classic Christmas album almost never happened. Get into the music and see why it perfectly captures the true feeling of Christmas. And see how this first special launched Charlie Brown onto a path of so many more specials that are still being released today. There's a few surprises along the way too, so buckle up. First up, let's talk about how this special came to be, how the music tied into it, and how it was almost never released. Our story starts in 1963 when producer Lee Mendelson was working on a documentary about Charles Schulz, the creator of the Peanuts comic strip. The documentary needed a score, so he called up Dave Brubeck. That's right, Vince Guaraldi was not the first call. It was Dave Brubeck, who told Mendelson that he had to take 5 and wasn't available to do it. I don't know about that joke. I don't think it's too corny. It's too... Anyway, Dave Brubeck couldn't do it, so Mendelson's second call also was not available either, but they both referred him to Vince Guaraldi, who had just won a Grammy in 1963 for his song Cast Your Fate to the Wind. This song is in A flat, it features bowed upright bass, changes styles a few times. Let's take a listen. Does this, sound familiar? Well, one day after being asked to do the music for this documentary on Charles Schulz, Vince Guaraldi calls up Lee Mendelson and plays this song over the phone for him. It's in A flat, it features bowed upright bass, and it changes styles a few times. Here's Cast Your Fate to the Wind, and Linus and Lucy. In many ways, Cast Your Fate to the Wind feels like a rough draft of Linus and Lucy. They're very similar, but Linus and Lucy has that driving left-hand piano line. Also, the way that line sits with the drums, it's really unique. I can do the stem separation on this mixer, but it's not perfect. Let's do it. All right, Jonte, show me the left-hand piano line on Linus and Lucy.
Okay.
And add the melody. Let's add drums on that. Now take piano out, keep going. That's a really interesting interplay with the beat, really. All of it being sort of offbeat like that. I don't know how it is for you, but I have to sort of think, almost not where the beat is and not think about that it's a push. I just have to feel where it is.
That's exactly the way it is for me. Exactly. The moment I start counting, sometimes I get thrown off.
There's also a section in this song that goes Latin, and then there's a big swing section, which then has a piano solo that is maybe the most swinging piano solo of any Christmas song in history. While Vince Guaraldi wrote this song, Linus and Lucy, for the Peanuts documentary in 1963, that documentary was delayed and wouldn't be released until years later. This song was actually originally released in 1964 for the Vince Guaraldi album Jazz Impressions of a Boy Named Charlie Brown, along with a whole album full of what you might call Charlie Brown jazz. So then the next year, in 1965, Coca-Cola was looking to sponsor a Christmas special, so they called up Lee Mendelson, who pitched them A Charlie Brown Christmas, which is a special that did not exist and he had just agreed to show them. In under a week, he called Charles Schulz, who got him an outline, and after looking it over, Coca-Cola gave them the green light to produce it, giving them just 6 months to make it. So they called Vince Guaraldi back up and asked him to do the soundtrack for A Charlie Brown Christmas. But by that point, Linus and Lucy was the perfect song for the Peanuts characters, so that track made it over to the Christmas special. I want to take a quick second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Factor. Look, like you, I'm busy and I love cooking, but I don't always have time to do it, and eating takeout all the time is expensive. That's the great thing about Factor. You can get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered to your door. Look, I was skeptical, but then they sent me some, and I gotta tell you, these meals are delicious, and they're ready in 2 minutes. This is, what is the name of this? Grilled chicken and brown butter Yukon mash with roasted green beans, mushroom, and leek butter. What is this, apple, kale, wheatgrass, cold-pressed juice? Yes! These meals are cheaper than takeout, more delicious, fresh, never frozen, and they offset 100% of delivery emissions and source 100% renewable electricity from their production sites and offices. Plus, they're flexible. You can get anywhere from 4 to 18 meals delivered per week, and you can pause or cancel deliveries anytime. It's cheaper, it's more delicious, and they're ready in 2 minutes. Head to my link and get 50% off for free shipping on your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders with code GREATS50. The other most famous song from this Christmas special and album is Christmas Time Is Here, which is so unique, I want to dive into this one next. Most Christmas music is cheery and upbeat. It's Christmas, it's gotta be, right? But the theme of this special, it starts with Charlie Brown basically having seasonal depression, is overwhelmed with the commercialization of Christmas, and bummed that he can't enjoy the season more. Again, this is a children's television special, but this is the most relatable thing for adults too. What I appreciate about the song Christmas Time Is Here is just the feeling of it. It's not upbeat and cheery, but it's also not straight up sad. It's sort of melancholy, the way that many people can feel around the holidays. These chords, well, let me just have Jonte play those again. Yeah. So what are those chords?
This is an F major 9.
Followed by
E flat 13, sharp 11.
A lot of notes in there. It's an expensive chord. When hearing this, what do you feel?
For me, it's a mixed emotion, where it's like there's beauty because of the major 9 sounding, but then there's like this tension of something's maybe missing. You know, it could be people who have lost a loved one, or maybe just tired of the holiday season, so they have this weight that they carry, even though it could be happy side. So it's like when you feel that sharp 9 tension, then you start hearing that descending chords that you just mentioned. Like it just feels like there's this also this kind of weight that's kind of weighing down as well.
Yeah. I think this descending thing, play that through that one more time. It's like a little bit of tension, and then we're slowly sort of just unraveling it until
subtle resolve.
Yeah. This song was originally composed as an instrumental, but after deciding that it needed lyrics, Lee Mendelson quickly scribbled out the words that the children's choir sings on the album. So, against all odds, they finish this Charlie Brown Christmas special, but producer Lee Mendelson, creator Charles Schulz, and animator Bill Melendez did not feel good about it. Schulz had insisted on keeping the section where Linus recites a passage from the Bible. The child voice actors they hired weren't professional, so some of the dialogue felt jittery, the pacing was slow, and then this jazz soundtrack, they were just kind of unsure about the whole thing. At one point, Melendez told Mendelson, "I think we've ruined Charlie Brown." The ad agency representing Coca-Cola didn't think it was very good, and neither did CBS. They didn't get the children's voices, the pacing, and the music. It all just seemed to not work. We've already looked at Linus and Lucy, which is the main Peanuts theme, as well as Christmas Time Is Here, which is a new original Christmas song for this special. But there are also jazz arrangements of other Christmas songs throughout this special and album. Take, for instance, the song O Tannenbaum. This is the song that plays when Charlie Brown goes Christmas tree shopping, and it's the first track on the album.
I want that.
There's something about these arrangements. It's jazz arrangements of Christmas classics, but they're so good. And of course, as they eventually became Christmas classics that you listen to every year, for me, when I hear it, it just locks in the feeling of Christmas. But of course, before all of this became a Christmas classic, the creators of the Charlie Brown special were worried that they had ruined Charlie Brown. There were Bible verses in it, a jazz score, amateur kid voices, and the slower pace. But time was running out. They turned the special into CBS a few days before it was supposed to air, and CBS did not like it. The only reason it aired is because they had already announced it and people were looking forward to it. Of course, once it did air, it was a surprising hit, and CBS immediately ordered 4 more specials, locking in Vince Guaraldi to score them. CBS aired the Christmas special again the following year, removing the Coca-Cola sponsor, and it's been a classic ever since. Since this Christmas special, they've made a Thanksgiving special, Halloween, Valentine's Day, so many more. And then in 2018, Apple bought the rights to these specials and began making even more, including a New Year's special, Snoopy Presents for Auld Lang Syne. There's also Snoopy in Space, The Snoopy Show, and so many other specials. These newer specials and shows have the unique task of carrying on the tradition that Vince Guaraldi and his trio started all the way back in 1963, providing the soundtrack to Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and the whole gang. Now here's the part where I reveal a crazy twist. So I played through some of these songs today with my friend Jonte Moore on piano, myself on upright bass, and a drummer. This guy is an incredible jazz drummer who's worked with people like Michael Bublé, Seth MacFarlane, and Jeff Goldblum, but he's also been the drummer on all of the modern Snoopy shows, including the New Year's special. He also happens to be my brother. So, Ryan, how do you approach something like this? We grew up listening to this album every Christmas, and we've actually played it together even before today. Yeah. So, how do you feel like when you're continuing this tradition on? Is that weird? How do you approach that?
I definitely never expected that I would be able to do it, it's very exciting, and I feel very lucky to be able to do it, but I definitely take it very seriously, I guess. I absolutely reference the old recordings a lot, and I remember going into the first recording sessions for the Peanuts shows. It's original music, and so it's different, but it is the same. Like, I have to reference that. So I was listening just on loop to the Christmas stuff and his other stuff, like I think Thanksgiving special as well. There's a bunch of great stuff in the style.
Jerry Granelli and Colin Bailey are the original drummers on the Christmas soundtrack. Do you feel like those are big shoes to fill? You said you reference those recordings. How does that process work with doing what you do, but also knowing that it is a very specific style?
Yeah, it's kind of the same that you would do when you're trying to do Vince's style on the piano, I think. It's like a specific thing, and so definitely making sure to reference those recordings and do it justice, but then, yeah, also make sure I'm not just straight trying to copy it, because it's never going to be the same, never going to be quite as good, because it's not the same cymbals and drums and stuff, and we're trying to do something at least a little different here.
Yeah. Well, you're trying to do something different because it is original music, and it's sort of in that style, but then you have recorded some of the original stuff, like you mentioned, Skating.
Yeah.
You have done. Which of the originals have you re-recorded?
There was one special, I think it's called Who Are You, Charlie Brown, that's like a documentary about Charles Schulz, and for that we actually redid a lot of the music. So it was Linus and Lucy, Skating, those are what I remember off the top of my head, because those are like the very specific drum parts. But we probably did Christmas Time Is Here as well. I wouldn't have been surprised. And yeah, I made sure to do those, I guess, justice. And I did a lot of takes to make sure I absolutely nailed it, and just practiced it a lot before I went into the session, because they're also very specific parts. Linus and Lucy is the kind of sweeping brushes with the accent that we saw earlier. And then Skating has an offbeat thing on the hi-hat the entire time. So you can't take a rest for one measure where it like breaks up the pattern. So you kind of have to nail it the entire time. So it's actually kind of like technically difficult, and then you have to make it feel good.
Talk to me about the process of recording it, because the originals, they just recorded it, and I've looked through interviews, and some of the animators were frustrated because they would have very loose endings, and they would just sort of like fade it out, which that sort of contributes to the slower pacing of the specials. But how does that work now?
So now it's kind of the opposite, which I think a lot of film stuff is done this way, where it's already mapped out to picture with like temp animation. And so we're playing to click the whole time, and then we're having to hit these cues. And there's been some very fun and very challenging cues. You have to just play Chaos for 2 bars because Charlie Brown's like stumbling, and then you have to smack beat 3 and land it with the animation. And it's really challenging, but really fun. And then there's been a lot of like drum solos where I'm having to like play a tom groove and then hit these specific animated cues. But the difference is, it's reverse. I'm hitting the animated cues as opposed to the animators hitting what that did. And I think probably that ends up with a, I guess, more cohesive product in the end. But there's also obviously the charm to just the jazz thing being off click and being presented underneath the animation.
Charlie Brown Christmas is the Christmas special that almost didn't happen. The creators were disappointed with the final result, but it ultimately captured a little bit of magic. That true feeling of Christmas, if you will. Joy and the feeling of being with your loved ones, but also the feeling of being at the end of a long year. I mean, it's cold, you're tired. It's the perfect mix of merry and melancholy. Thinking about the long history of Christmas songs, this album belongs in the Hall of Fame. But as far as individual songs go, there's one song that for me tops them all. I'm talking, of course, about This Christmas by Donny Hathaway, which is simultaneously a perfect, unique, soulful Christmas song, but it also throws back to another Christmas classic before it. But for that whole story, you gotta click here.